And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. You're tuned in to Tapped Out. Hosted by Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine. Only on the BetQL Network.
Putting a bow on this episode on the BetQL Network with producer Jake and my co-host Brendan. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine. We appreciate you checking us out. If you're looking for the UFC fights, you missed them. Main event, Ilia Topuria by decision earlier today in Jacksonville took out Josh Emmett. Amanda Hebos got into a good fight with Macy Barber. There was a lot of good fights on that Jacksonville card. We will preview plenty of UFC as we always do next week. And then right around the corner, we've got a pay-per-view 2 weeks away. So tapped out every week here on the BetQL Network. Let's polish this thing off, guys, having a little bit of fun. We've got the BMF fight coming up. I guess technically it's the BMF fight part 2. Of course, the first one, Jorge Masvidal won the initial belt versus Nate Diaz. Now we've got Justin Gaethje versus Dustin Poirier, which made my creative mind think we should have a BMF draft. Who's the baddest MR-effer in the history of the UFC? So you can take anybody. In fact, if you want to go outside the UFC, if you want to take Fedor, go ahead and do it. We pick straws during the break. Brendan has the first pick. We'll each pick 5. Snake draft. Brendan, Jake, and then me. The floor is yours. You can take any BMF in the history of the UFC, Brendan. Who you got with the first pick?
I'm going to take the guy we talked about last segment because before BMF was a thing, this guy was basically the poster boy for it. And he's actually very close with the BMF in Jorge Masvidal. I'm going to go with Robbie Lawler, who is going in the Hall of Fame this weekend or going to the Hall of Fame in, next month in his fight against Rory McDonald. He once had his lips split in half. He spit blood. Not even close to the only classic fight that this guy has had. I mean, he speaks everything that is BMF. So I'm going with Robbie Lawler, number 1 pick.
I'm not mad at you, and definitely, as you mentioned, a Hall of Famer, whether it was as an individual or the fight that we talk about all the time versus Rory McDonald. Probably, for my money, the greatest fight in the history of the Octagon. All right, so Robbie Lawler, Jake, is off the board. You, my friend, are now on the clock.
All right. The man who got me into mixed martial arts. Growing up as a child, nobody was more BMF than BJ Penn. And I'm not talking about BJ Penn's last, 11 losses in a row or whatever. I'm talking about BJ Penn when he was a champion. This man used to beat his opponents, take the blood from his opponents, and lick it. There's been times where he didn't get blood on him from his opponents, so he ran across the octagon after the win, took blood off his face, and licked it. That's as BMF as it gets.
You ain't kidding. And yeah, you're right. At the end, like the most recent BJ Penn that you think of, not even close to the BMF conversation for a long time, though. I mean, when he was the prodigy, yes, absolutely has to be on the list. All right, so if you know how these fantasy snake drafts work, I got 2 picks. This is a BMF draft, and I cannot believe these 2 fools that I work with here every Saturday, and I love these guys like brothers. But we've seen one real BMF fight, and these guys are going to give me both of them, and I'm going to take them both. Give me Jorge Masvidal and give me Nate Diaz.
Wow.
I mean, there's a reason, dude.
Jorge.
There's a reason why. There's a reason why when they decided to have this belt, there was 2 guys that came to mind at the time, Jorge Masvidal. And look, Jake, you know that I have no problem talking smack on Masvidal because I know he's BT's favorite fighter. I know he was there with this fight and that fight. The truth is, though, if we just take 1 year frozen in time, whether it's the flying knee, the knockout of Darren Till, any of these highlights that you wanted, the BMF, that dude really was, back then, that dude. So give me him, and I don't really need to tell you guys why I took Nate Diaz, because Nate Diaz is Nate Diaz. What's your problem, Brendan? How can you possibly shake your head at my pick?
No, first of all, I called your bluff because you were like, oh, you obviously are going to take Masvidal.
I told you I'd take him, dude. I told you I'd take him.
Yeah, but I didn't believe you. I didn't believe you. I thought he was going to be there for value for me. I thought I could play chicken with you, and I lost, so I didn't get my guy.
You lost. And honestly, well, you're not up, so you have to wait. That's the way these drafts work. Actually, Jake gets to pick next.
Worry.
But yeah, man, I was going to take Robbie Lawler, so it's all right. We played a little reverse psychology on each other. You end up with Ruthless. I end up with Game Bread. Jake, the floor is yours.
This was not my original second pick. This is about my third or fourth, but seeing as we're being strategic about this, I can't risk losing my Philly boy, Eddie Alvarez. His war with, whoever it be, Poirier, Gaethje, Chandler, recently Mendez. The man puts on a beating. He takes a beating, and he embraces it every time. He's got that Philly heart. So I got to take Eddie Alvarez.
I was going to say, he's still kind of the BMF. Like, if you saw his bare knuckle fight a couple of weeks ago, you could still slap those three letters on that guy. All right, so if you're just tuning in, we're having a little fun here before we get out of here. It's our all-time BMF draft. We're each going to draft a starting five. I think we all agree I'm off to a pretty good start. I've got Masvidal and Nate Diaz. My boy Jake has BJ Penn and Eddie Alvarez. BT has Robbie Lawler, and BT has the next two picks. You're up.
All right, I'm going to go with Chuck Liddell, the Iceman. Absolute slugger, former champ. Everybody loved Chuck Liddell. Like this guy was just like bite down on the mouthpiece, swing away, old school, love him. And then I'm going to go with one of the greatest fights you've ever seen, just got in the Hall of Fame last year, Cub Swanson. Badass.
Wow.
Cub Swanson.
I actually had Cub, I added him to my overall master list. Definitely a badass fighter, no question about it. Chuck Liddell, though, I think most people, if you're not a fight fan, Chuck Liddell's the one that comes to mind. You agree? I would say that his face is probably even more so, and maybe it was the timing. You can go back to Randy Couture, Ken Shamrock, all those dudes. But I would say he's probably got the most synonymous face and mohawk in the history of mixed martial arts fighting.
Still like an aura to him, even with the way that the career ended, even with the goofy fight with Tito at the end. I saw him one time at a radio. I was like, damn, it's the Iceman right there. That's Chuck Liddell.
That's Chuck Liddell, dude. That's Chuck Liddell.
That's Goosey's right there.
It really is. All right, Jake, you're on the board.
I mean, if we're talking Iceman, we got to talk. The only man who's ever scared me playing a UFC video game as a kid. I didn't want to fight him. I didn't like watching him on TV. I never want to meet him in person. And I'm not talking about his recent Bellator stretch, but I am talking about UFC's Quentin Rampage Jackson. After every win, and it's by knockout, he's knocking you out cold. He just flexes and howls in the middle of the octagon. And as an 8-10-year-old kid watching that, big imprint on my manhood, we'll say. So gotta draft Quentin Rampage to the team.
Rampage was terrifying, man. When he would win a fight, as you said, and put that chain on, get that water, blow it out, do the howl, goodness gracious, because I'm like you. You're watching it as a kid. You're like, good. I don't think I want to fight that guy, so I've got one for you. With my third overall pick, the backyard brawler from Miami himself. You already gave me Jorge Masvidal. Give me Kimbo Slice. How am I not going to take Kimbo Slice? Now, I get it. What, are you mad? Are the 305 all the way made itself to
all
the
of a sudden,
816?
what do you got? Some Trick Daddy playing in the background? What else you got going on back there, dude? You going to throw it to you?
Yeah, I do. And then coming up after that, a little Pitbull. We got all of them, dude. Yeah, I got Gloria Estefan coming up a little bit later on in the show. 305 made its way all the way to Kansas City. I've upset my guy. I've got Masvidal. I've got Kimbo. I've got Nate Diaz. And I feel like I'm going to get clowned on for this one, but I'm going to do it anyway. What do I care? Give me Nick Diaz also. I get it. We just talked about him taking a knee against Robbie Lawler. Let's not pretend like he wasn't one of the baddest MRFers for at least 10 years, maybe plus. And I'm not just talking about the UFC. I'm talking about his entire career before that. Where you at, George? All those. I got Nate. Give me Nick also. Look at this BMF squad I got. I just got to point this out. I got Masvidal, Kimbo Slice, Nate Diaz, and Nick Diaz. You guys are done. We'll put this on Twitter or somewhere, but we don't really need to. I think the poll is already taking care of itself. You're up, Jake.
This guy's recent, an active fighter, although he's injured at the moment, hopefully coming back soon. The craziest man on the UFC roster, Yuri Prohaska. His style is elbows and knees and blood, and then he posts videos of him just being in the snow without a shirt on. whispering in his little accent, and then he starts to scream. He's crazy. He's an animal. He's a BMF, and he's coming aboard Team Noecker.
When you started with that description, you're like, well, he's not really currently fighting, and he's crazy. I was sure you were going with Conor McGregor. I was absolutely positive you were going to say the notorious one. All right, BT, we got 2 minutes left. Let's speed it up. You got 2 picks. What say you?
All right, first, I'm going to give a little nod to the show because one of our OG guests, whoever came on, I mean, this guy does not care about the FCC. He is also taken more shots than I've ever seen in a fight. He's just he embodies everything that is BMF. Calvin Cater. Calvin Cater is on my squad, and I'm very proud to have him here. That guy is as BMF as it gets. Honestly, if it wasn't whatever matchup they got coming up in Salt Lake City, this guy should have been fighting for it. And then I have the next BMF, the guy who's officially going to wear the belt, and that is Dustin Poirier to close me out.
I was wondering if anybody was going to take the guys that are fighting for the next BMF belt. So BT's team is complete. Here's his all-time BMF squad. Robbie Lawler, Chuck Liddell, Cub Swanson, Calvin Cater, Dustin Poirier. Jake, your last pick.
I'll keep it quick. Last pick in OG. You've seen the memes on Twitter of this is what happens when you fight the boogeyman. El Kukui, Tony Ferguson. Bring him aboard.
Actually, I'm not going to lie. You took my guy. I wanted El Kukui too because, dude, for a time, he was that dude. If you're curious, some of the other guys I had on my list before I tell you my pick and then we get out of here. Vanderlei Silva almost made the team. Joel Romero almost made the squad. Conor McGregor almost made the team.
Cowboy.
No, you know what I think I'm going to take? You know what I think I'm going to take? I think I'm going to take Cain Velasquez. Does it come any more scary? Does it come any more BMF than, in my opinion, on the short list with the greatest heavyweight fighters of all time? That's it. That's my list. That's the radio show. And that was a whole lot of fun. Appreciate Clint McClain from Die Hard MMA Podcast for joining us. Yes?
I just need to say, Cain, even recently legally, BMF.
Yeah, oh, yeah. No
Real
problems with that here. No problems with that here. That is Jake. That is Brendan Tobin. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine. Coming up next, more chances to make some money. You're locked into the BetQL Network. Good night.